Welcome, YouTube. This is Emperor Dion. Today's topic. This is something that I've wanted to bring up for a while now, but I do feel like much of the problems of the male loneliness epidemic and the inceldom crisis in particular, I do think that, along with many other things that people complain about, most of this is a function of class. Yes, it's a function of class. Like, what do I mean by this? So, in the Western world, we have this foundational idea that, hey, we abolished the king. Hey, we abolished monarchy. We got rid of royal nobilities and titles like this. Like, people kind of see stuff like that, like pretentious claims to nobility. Like, people see stuff like this as pretty cringe. So we not only abolish these things legally, but we also abolish them culturally too, such that we push the idea of liberalism, which there's lots of things associated with liberalism, but one of those things is the abolishment of class. And so there is no more class, insofar as that there is a tangible class that you belong to these days. The thought or the idea is supposed to be that through hard work and grit, that you can work your way out of whatever material lack of condition you are in. But if you look at the world, especially the world today, I mean, this kind of always was, but especially the world today, much of the foundational ideas that underpin our society it does not hold up. We never abolished class. As a matter of fact, class has reinforced itself far more so than it was historically. So even though we don't have kings, queens, lords, dukes, even though we don't have these titles of nobility anymore, the whole premise of class is very much still here with us today. So now, and I'm kind of ad-libbing on this as I go, because there's no script when I make these videos, but bear with me here. So much of the problems that, like, again, that people are worried about, most of these things are only going to apply to you if you are part of a certain class. So, like, usually at the bottom class. So everybody from, like, the middle class on down. Like, what even are the classes? If you're talking about American society, because it's different in Europe, but in American society, the classes roughly are the poor class, the people on welfare, then the working class, then the middle class, then the professional class, and then it kind of branches off two ways. So then you have the business owner class, then the counter elite, and then on the other side you've got the Ivy League graduates, the institutional professionals, and then you've got the establishment elite. So that's kind of more or less what the classes look like in America, at least. So if you're a young man and you're not part of, like, at least like the upper middle class or the professional class, or you don't come from a family that's at least part of that class, more than likely you're going to suffer all these various things. Like, and especially with the way the world is financialized now, such that if you don't have money and lots of it, yeah, your lifestyle is going to slowly start to creep down and down and down over time due to inflation. You're going to continuously have your lifestyle eroded. And it's not like it was before, where you're just going to be like an absolute peasant. Like, no, it's like a luxury poverty that we have today. So, like, yeah, you'll still have a smartphone, you'll still have, like, clothes and shit, and probably food too. Not the best food, but you'll have it. You'll have all these things. You'll have like the basic needs, but definitely be in this very precarious state where everything, as far as like what you've expected in modern society, it's going to be very much in question. Okay, so things such as belonging, things such as like just basic community, things such as being able to be physically active, because this is one thing, like a lot of people aren't able to be physically active because they're working at a wage slave job just to keep the lights on, and oftentimes not even accomplishing that. Yeah, so most people are not able to even partake in physical exercise, even, so that they become fat. And also they become fat from eating bad food, not having access to the best of food. So being part of the lower class today means typically you're overweight, very low physical activity, you live in a low trust environment, you don't have really a community or a sense of belonging, so you feel very atomized and isolated. And there's other things you could throw in that, like lack of access to medical care if anything catastrophically goes wrong, or insofar as that you do get medical care, okay, they're just going to give you pills that are not really going to cure whatever condition you got, but it's just going to treat it, so that you'll constantly have to keep coming back, thus creating reoccurring revenue for the pharmaceutical companies. So you're the prime demographic for being a spawn camp for money for the pharmaceutical companies. It means various things like this, various things of which, again, you're not exactly like a medieval peasant, but you're certainly in what's called luxury poverty if you're below a certain class. And so, and like this male loneliness epidemic too, like how many of these guys are part of like a lower class that are being affected by this? Because I'll tell you, if you're truly part of the upper class, you know, there you could still be an incel and be from a well-to-do family, but I'm saying you've got tools available, and more often than not, you're not gonna fall into that situation if you just are from a family of a higher class, because especially if they take an interest in making sure you get the means to integrate into that class once you come of age, you know, like you're gonna be introduced to good schools, good education, good services, good incentives. If you were at all trained by your parents, you know, you're gonna have access to, and by consequence be much less likely to fall into the lower classes if you were born into a much better off class. So what I'm saying here is how much of the things that a lot of lonely guys go through is really just a function of their class and not much really else to that. Like, what if lookism, for instance, isn't really as much of a culprit as you think it is, but it's really just kind of boiling down to class? Because there are rigid barriers between class guys. There's certain behaviors, there's certain things you're going to have access to, there's certain social opportunities that you're going to have access to entirely predicated on your class. And there is no hard factor that says, oh, you're part of this class. There's like a nebulous set of factors that all accumulate as to whether or not you're in a class or not. And so, and I think about this a lot myself, because I have a kind of low self-esteem tied to the idea that I know I started off in a very low class. My family was poor as shit, you know? So that's where I've had to fight and claw my way out of. But no matter how much I claw, you know, I've done pretty well for myself, but no matter how much I claw and struggle to try and uplift and get to a higher class, you know, they say you can tell the class of somebody by the mannerisms, by the manners or the lack of manners that they have. Many of my manners are not in line with that of the higher class. And so that tells me that I would have to do an unfathomable amount of work that I'm not willing to do, by the way, in order to get to the class I think I deserve to be in. And unless I get lucky or something, I'm always going to be in a lower class than I feel like I deserve. You see, and by consequence of being in that class, I'm going to suffer a whole bunch of things that I shouldn't be having to suffer. Like, the very fact that I'm a truck driver, for instance, like, look at me. Do I look like a truck driver? No, I don't. And really, I know for a fact that I can handle a much more intellectually taxing job. I can handle a much more intellectual lifestyle than what this is. And I don't like this lifestyle. I don't like having to be physical. I don't like having to use my hands to make a living. I don't like having to get myself dirty, fucking around with trucks and bullshit related to this, or any other type of blue collar job for that matter. I don't like having to indulge in the working class lifestyle in order to earn my living. But that tells me that I'm not in a higher class. I'm actually in a lower class, just by consequence of the fact that I'm having to do this type of work. And the only way I would ever be able to elevate out of that low working class is, again, if I put in all kinds of work that it's not at all guaranteed to succeed or not, you know, and frankly, I'm not willing to do that type of work. I'm not willing to go to college. I'm not willing to go get all kinds of certifications and learn how to do shit. And because I know if I were to do that, that may not work out well. I may still fail in that endeavor. And even if you succeed, you're going to have to work in a field for years and years and years and climb and build working a job. And I don't want to work a job. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. No, instead, what I would rather do is take myself out of American society where I'm guaranteed this low class and implant myself into a different society where I'm going to inherently be of a much higher class than I would have been able to reach, you know? So, where am I going with this? Well, basically, I'm just trying to get you guys to consider the class you're actually part of, and to consider, hey, you know, the world never really quite abolished classism, even though much of the founding ideas of the West revolved around so-called abolishing these things. These things have not been abolished. They will not be abolished anytime soon for the foreseeable future. So start considering, what class are you really part of? If you are hanging around certain types of people, if you have certain manners, like you curse a lot, you don't have like manners, you don't speak to people right, you're loud, you're rude, you drink, you do substances, you know, all that shit will let you know that, hey, you're part of a lower class. Most definitely, you're part of a lower class, because people of the higher classes don't do those activities. People of the higher class, they have certain manners, they have a certain way of viewing the world, they have certain politics, and they have a certain level of income, and they live in certain communities. So they're not going to have like rude mannerisms. They're not going to have a sailor's mouth. They're not going to have like rude ideas about the world. They're not going to roll in these ways that a lot of people that I've been around in my life are typically going to roll, you know. So your class is the driving force behind why you may experience the things you experience. And do consider, like, it may not be your looks, okay? I do believe what's happening overall is that if you're part of the lower class, you're having more and more things just stripped away from you. So yeah, if you're a guy in the lower class, like you nowadays, it's no longer expected that you're going to get a girlfriend. No. Instead now, like most guys aren't even able to secure the basic building blocks of like a social framework. So they don't even have that. they're too poor to afford that, and they're of too low class to afford that. No, all of the reproduction and all of the social and dating capital is moving up market to people of the higher classes. So if you're part of the higher classes, you're going to be the ones that are going to be able to afford this. But if you're part of the lower class or part of the working class, it's no longer an expectation that you're going to be able to secure, a romantic partner even, along with all the other things you lack. So do consider how much of the inkwell community and how much of the manosphere in general are just guys that are part of the low class that are perpetually stuck in the lower class too. Because another thing about the way the world's going is that they're going to lock you into whatever station in life that you're currently in. It is going back to a medieval feudal system in that regard. That's where it's going. But the technology is already out and it's changed many aspects around such that, of course, it's not going to resemble medieval peasantry, but it's going to be certainly a modern serf type of deal going forward here if you're part of the lower classes. So anyways, this kind of ties into a topic I said too before about how the ruling classes is just going to take away people's freedom eventually. They're going to lock you in a cell and you're not going to be able to do much of anything. You're not even going to be able to have money. You'll just be given, your food, water, your entertainment, your goy slop, and you'll just be, I don't know, like a eyeball on an advertisement. Like they're just gonna use you guys as like advertising forms or some shit. I don't know, but I do heavily suspect that's where it's going if you're part of the low class. And so I don't know. Let's go ahead and end it here. I think I've rambled on and put the tinfoil hat on enough in this video. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but there are certainly a lot of things that you have to stop and look at and be like, that ain't quite right. Why would they be doing that? You don't even have to be a conspiracy theorist to see shit like that. So, anyways, reality is often stranger than fiction. But, yeah, your social class. Put more thought into that, guys. Put more thought into that, because the whole lookism thing that gets pushed around in these spaces, I think that's not really explaining. And I always felt like that too, Like, it's got a role to play, but that ain't all there is, Because if it was just as simple as, you can look smacks and change your whole system, nah, it's not that, guys. There's more to it than that. That's all I'm saying. So anyways, I'll go ahead, cut it here, stop rambling. This has been Emperor Dion the Lion, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.